Well, happy Tuesday. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our home in Mesa, Arizona. And today we're going to be exploring healing your own body through the lens of low back, hips, and sciatica. And again, welcome. My name's Heath.
I'm Nicole. Thanks for joining us.
Just a little logistic reminder that if you haven't muted your screen yet, please mute either by hovering your cursor over your mute button, or if you're calling in on your cell phone, you can just hit your phone's mute device. However, if you ever have a comment, if you have a question, if you'd like a little more clarity around anything, please unmute yourself. Don't wait for us to ask if you have questions. Feel free to just jump in.
Jump in anytime, every time. You participating is us collaborating. We get to co-create this experience together, and we all get to walk away feeling like we got something valuable. We spent our time well.
And I'll also remind you about the different views. You can either do the gallery view or the speaker view if you click in the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom screen. And if you'd like to be sure that you're mostly focusing on Nicole and I, or the hands-on, you can also hover over our screen where those three buttons are and click pin to pin video on ours, and then you'll mostly just get our image. And then again, you could do the gallery view, which is very fun, little Brady Bunch, all the layers and columns, or speaker view, whatever you need. And feel free to connect via audio,
yes,
or in the chat room too. We'll be watching that. All right, so before we jump into new curriculum, yesterday we were covering the knees to the toes. So we talked a bit about plantar fasciitis, talked about chronic ankle instability, and how our peroneal longus or fibularis tendon that goes from the outside of our shin underneath our foot can sometimes create some tension, and how it's important if we're looking to heal in our feet or knees that we also open up the entire lateral fascial meridian.
Yeah, and today we'll get to talk about the deep frontal line and how those two, particularly the lateral meridian and the deep frontal line, connect to each other and create, starting this this kind of pulley system that helps us move and glide and stride through space and time with ease and flow.
Cool. And are there, before we jump into new info, are there any questions from here clarify for you? All right. Well, if something comes up, please be sure to speak up, let us know. And I'm going to turn the mic over to Nicole, who's going to start us off with some finding our core exercises.
Let's wake up to our core. And I love, Heath and I are always looking for different ways that we can feel better in our bodies, perform better in our bodies. And a big part of doing that, one way that we activate and we turning on muscles is our ways that we can start to perform better and feel better in our bodies. So let's get into our core. Let's feel what it feels like to move from our core, doing its main actions as a way to just kind of wake up, build your body map, get self-awareness kind of turned on so that you can start to activate those muscles so that you too can perform better, walk better, feel better in your body.
Cool. So I'm going to help set up the camera.
All righty, cool. So you want to do this, we're going to do this standing, and your feet are about hip width apart. And, oh, I'll go back further. Sorry. Thank you. I'm getting coaching. Here we go. All right, cool. So we're starting feet about hip width apart. Are you going to join me, though?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Awesome. Do you need me to move over?
That'd be great.
All right, adjusting.
And again, if there's, at any time, if you have difficult seeing us or hearing us, please unmute and let us know.
So hip width, feet about hip width apart. Let's begin to just, we're just gonna start to like do some hula hooping in a way. And you're just hula hooping, waking up the hips, the lower body. Let your upper body just kind of follow your lower body as it initiates the movement. Let your head move with it, your whole axial skeleton, your core spine moving in this kind of circular hula hoop motion, waking up, just noticing how that feels in your lower body, your legs, your hips.
And we're circling our pelvis, but we're also circling our ribs, and we're also circling our neck. So feel that connection from your tailbone to the crown of the head.
And then, let's reverse it. Go ahead.
So this is kind of an assessment. We're not looking to necessarily strengthen anything, but rather, can you feel your entire periphery, that is your arms, your hands, and your legs, lifted and mobilized, impacted from your very core? Because when we are talking about healing low back, hip, and sciatic projects, it's very important that we think of our back in 360 degrees. So the fronts, the sides, the backs, above and below.
And then pause. And then, all right, feel that. Notice how that feels, invigorates, enlivens, wakens up your body a little bit more. And now we're just going to do some isolation. We're going to isolate and really turn on our QL muscle, because I think when most of us think of low back pain, low back tension, they think of QL, their actual low back. So let's see and feel.
If you're a massage therapist, you've heard of QL, quadratus lumborum. If not, you probably haven't, or maybe you've heard of erector spinae. But anyway, we're going to help unlock all around that lower back.
By doing what it's meant to do, and that's move in specific directions. So we're going to start to move from your core. So I like to place my hands on my hips so that my hips stay still the whole time. So you don't want any movement. You don't want your hips to move, or move as little as possible as we start to engage your upper body. And we can start to turn. Just a little bit of rotate. See if you can get that movement. Kind of feel yourself, all the muscles, organs move around your spine. As you move to one side, we're just rotating to one side. See how far you can go. Doesn't matter. Just kind of noticing how far you can go. Just, oh, there I am. That's what's happening. That's what my QL does. That's a little bit of what your QL does. Does a little bit of rotation to one side. We want to do that like 5 or 6 times to each one side. And then we're going to try that to the other side. Oh, notice, is it easier to go to one side than the other?
Yeah, it's easier for me to go this way than the other way. And I recommend, you might be confused if you have your hands sideways. So put your hands on your hips, and you want these to stay put from your hips down to your feet, but you want to feel rotation in through your abdomen, in through the spinal column behind your ribs, as well as your neck or cervicals.
All right, about 5 or 6 times that way. And then pause. Okay, waking up. There's your QL. That's your low back. All right, let's wake it up even some more. So now hips, still holding onto your hips, still isolating the core a little bit. Let's just drop lateral flexion, just to one side. Just laterally flex, dropping your rib to touch your hip. Just see how that feels. Squeezing into your side body a little bit here.
So you can not only imagine your rib dropping to your hip, but you can also imagine your hip lifting up to meet its pair, its buddy, its rib.
Nice. Well, again, like 5, 6 times this way. Cool. And then let's try it the other way. And again, ooh, what's happening here? Is that easy? Is that hard? Does that feel simple?
Can you isolate that musculature between your ribs and your pelvis? And notice sometimes there's a tendency to exaggerate the tailbone forward or back. Try to avoid this overarching. Bring your ribs in as you do the side bending.
And then we'll come back to neutral pelvis, neutral spine. All right, there's that feeling, that sensation, waking. I feel that starting to wake up not only just my low back, but I can start to feel that in my mid back, maybe even a little bit in between my shoulder blades. Just start to notice how that impacts. What else is turning on as you wake up your own QL? And then from here, still hands on, actually, let's have one hand on a hip, one hand on a rib, because we're going to do some isolation. Slide that rib over to one side like a cash register. You're pushing your rib to one side and then back to neutral. So I like to hold onto my hand, one hand on the hip, one hand on the rib, to kind of help push those ribs over. And there's Jake. Hey, Jake. He's the star of the show. I know.
Would you mind going closer to the camera to demonstrate
Sure.
what you're doing with your ribs?
Sure, happy to.
So we're trying to keep our hips as is. We're trying not to do too much sachet in our hips, but we're trying to move our ribs left and right without moving our hips and pelvis.
And maybe you can do that without your touching.
Yeah, you can have your hands dangle, hands contacting, or one hand to your body, one hand to the body.
Let's go the other way. Ooh,
So
that's a
now-
little tougher for me to do. So we're isolating. We're getting ready for the belly dance competition here.
Oh, is that what's going to happen?
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was signing up for, Nicole.
That's what happens at what, 11 o'clock our time? Here we go. That's a different class, right? I guess. So a couple more. Let's do a couple more of those. I'm noticing that as I do that, I tighten my jaw a little bit. So can you start to notice those secondary muscles that get involved, where we add more effort to something far, far away from somewhere far away? We add more effort, more tension to a movement. Unnecessary tension always leads to pain. Well, can lead to pain and suffering.
Yeah, unnecessary effort leads to pain and tension.
All right, so we got that.
Don't get too concerned if you're not understanding everything. These are just opportunities to begin to wake up these different musculature and these different sections.
And some of these movements were really easy for you. So noticing those, which ones are the easiest for you to do, and which one are the most challenging, because we want to revisit those later. Next, finally, this muscle, this area, this core, we're going to slide our rib to the side, last movement, and then add a little crunch. So I'll turn to the side a little bit so you can see. So you're going to reach your ribs to one side, isolation of the ribs, and then tail tuck, release, and then come back to center. Isolate, ribs, tail tuck, and let it go. Let's do 2 or 3 more of those. Ooh,
ribs,
delivery,
tail tuck.
Reach to the side. Ooh, I feel that stretch. I feel that tuck. So we're starting to activate now SI joint a little bit, that connection of the lumbar to the sacrum, sacroiliac joint, where a lot of times things get kind of stuck or stagnant.
Rib glide. Curl the
Tail tuck.
tailbone.
Let's do it to the other side. So we'll
Rib glide.
rib glide to the other side, and then tail tuck.
Untuck, unglide.
And back to neutral. And let it go. Let's do 2 or 3 more of those. Noticing your breath. Are you holding your breath? When are you breathing in? When are you breathing out? Which moves are easier for you? How does this feel in your low back, your glutes? How does it feel in your upper shoulders, your jaw? Relax your toes.
And definitely notice which side is easier, which side is more challenging. The side that's more challenging, for your personal practice, you'd spend about 2 or 3 times more time investing on the side that feels a little more disconnected, tighter, or weaker.
Nice. Let that go. So now we're going to do that same rotation that we started with. We're just going to rotate that axial skeleton around those hips. Has anything changed? How does that feel? Any better? Smoother? Just noticing the benefits again of your efforts circulating from head to toe, toes to nose, belly button to spine. Go ahead.
Well, I'm noticing that some of the hot fire poker sensations in my neck and shoulders when I first did this are totally gone.
Reverse.
So I was noticing a little tension in the top of my traps when we had first done this. And now it's just gone away, even though we haven't technically focused on the shoulders.
Right.
So notice not only in the core where you might feel some shifting, some changes, but notice the periphery, notice the other adjacent areas throughout your body.
Pause. We're going to add just a little bit more to this. I back up because I'm going to play with my feet, the angle of my feet a little bit, and I'm going to turn my feet out like little duck feet. And then I'm going to add that rotation again. So this position of your femur, how they're positioned inside your joint, that hip socket, will change the experience in your SI joint, sacroiliac joint, where the sacrum and ilium, the hip bones come together, and that L5 lumbar vertebrae meets the sacrum. So notice how this changes the experience of the low back. Just adding to it, building more awareness, proprioceptive awareness in the hip joint.
Now, if you do one of these angles in the feet and it doesn't feel good, don't do it.
Sometimes it feels better to do it a little wider if it feels a lot of tension, if you feel like a lot of tension here, and then reverse. What's that?
I was asking if we were going to reverse sometime this morning.
Keith was ready to reverse, ready to go.
Now, with the feet out, like we have them, duck feet, sometimes you feel more strain in the knee or a side joint. So just be mindful that your foot position changes how the forces of gravity and ground reaction force, the equal and opposite reaction of gravity, pushes back up into our body.
Turn your feet in and then rotate.
Now little pigeon feet, pigeon toe.
Ooh, a little pops, smack pops over here.
Yeah, I got totally different sensations, especially in my low back when I did this direction.
Reverse.
Feels a little tighter and stiffer, but I also feel more opening happening as a result.
I notice it's easier to go this way than it was to come around to the right. So just like to notice your range of motion. Where does your body go? Maybe even try this once with your eyes closed. Challenge your balance. Change the sensation in your body. One more big breath. And then pause. Feet come back to neutral. Let's just shake that out, shake that loose. You're gonna inhale through your nose, exhale through your soft jaw, open mouth, signaling to the body that all is well. Let your fingers be floppy, your wrists flop, the arms dangle. And then maybe feel yourself shifting to the right, to the left, to the front, to the back. What would feel best for you and your body? Let your head shake a little. Feel the knees nice and soft.
Make sure everything feels friendly, feels safe. Don't overdo anything. Also, keep in mind not just your physical approach, but what are you telling yourself? Be mindful, friendly attitude.
Maybe add a gentle smile to yourself, to your body. Send that smile, your beautiful smile, across. Sweep it across every cell from your crown of your head to your toes. And then pausing.
And take a moment to notice. Notice any tingles, notice any temperature changes, maybe circulation. Notice how you feel. Notice what you're sensing. Notice the results of your efforts. And now we'll bring it down to the ground.
Yes.
And Nicole's going to be our model demo.
Okay.
And I'm going to invite you all, lay out your yoga mat if it's not there already, or a towel, or some kind of blanket on the floor.
Okay.
And, or maybe you just have a nice carpet. You don't necessarily need a yoga mat. And also, if you can, either grab a block
or a blanket, a towel, something thick that you can
use. So if you don't have a block available, grab a blanket or even a couch pillow, something like that.
Couch pillow.
A hand towel.
We're going to place it between your knees. That's where it's going to end up going. So you want something thick enough that you can squeeze it.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to begin laying on our back. Our knees will be bent. Our feet will be flat. And we're going to explore what's called a neutral pelvis.
Ooh, yeah.
So a lot of times, if we're out of alignment, our pelvis will be jacked back in what's called anterior pelvic tilt, or it'll be tucked under excessively in what's called excessive thoracic kyphosis. So
jacked back.
We want to find a gentle, easy way to feel the neutrality in our pelvis. And to do that, we're going to connect our breath with our movement. This is called the yes breath. And by coordinating our movement with our breathing, we can begin to recalibrate our respiratory, our neurological, and our musculoskeletal system into a nice homeostasis. So as you inhale, begin to arch your lower back off the mat. So I could slide my hand under the lower back. But as you exhale, begin to curl your tailbone up toward the ceiling. So now the low back is pushed into the ground. And take a few deep breaths like this. We inhale, arch the low back. The tailbone presses into the ground. As we exhale, draw that navel point toward the earth. You're trying to create an airtight seal between the ground and your low back. You can inhale and exhale through your nose, or if you like to practice the letting go breath, inhale through your nose as you arch your low back, tailbone down, and exhale out an open mouth. And let's enjoy 3 more deep breaths, feeling the connectivity from our tailbone all the way to the crown of our head. 1 more deep breath here. What are you receiving as you inhale? Imagine there's a big clock under you and your tailbone presses into 12. And as you exhale, the waistband presses into 6. Let's do that one more time so you can visualize the clock. Inhale, as the tailbone presses down into the ground, you're pressing into 12 o'clock. As the low back rounds, then the waistband presses into 6 o'clock. And now we're going to find a neutral pelvis. So halfway between 12 and 6 o'clock is where the hour and minute hand would fit, or would be located. Let the middle of the clock anchor into the earth. So our low back isn't overly arched, but it's also not overly rounded. So find where it's very easy and simple to allow your pelvis to be relaxed. Great. Take another breath or 2 here. So a lot of times our low back gets tight and seizes in response to stress. So the more relaxed we can be psychologically, the more calm our neurological system and our musculoskeletal system will be. As you're ready, let's cross the right ankle over the left thigh. And you're going to flex your toes towards your nose. Your hands and arms are going to open out like wings. And Nicole, I wonder if you would mind putting your head toward the camera and putting your crossed legs away from the camera.
Like this?
Yeah, that'd be good. Even more at an angle so your head is facing perfect. And then right ankle over left thigh. And then we have our arms outstretched like wings. Perfect. I'm moving. You're going to roll one palm up, but you're going to roll the other palm down. And so notice not only are we rotating the palm, but we're also rotating the elbow crease and even the shoulder socket. So one hand is rolled.
Off the floor?
The hand may or may not come off the floor, but it's as though you're trying to give the floor a high five by rolling the palm up. And the other hand is going to do the reverse. So when you roll the palm down, not only does the palm come down, but the elbow crease rolls down, and even the shoulder takes a little dive all the way around. So when I say one palm up, one palm down, also rotate the elbow crease and the shoulder socket. So do that now. Inhale, I'm going to just bring your hand a little lower for the camera.
Okay.
Inhale, one palm up, one palm down, and drop your crossed legs over to the downturned palm. So
they're both down.
Sometimes Nicole just likes to harass me because it brings her pleasure.
Well, they're both down.
So exhale, bring the legs back through neutral, reverse which palm is up, which palm is down. Okay, that's the upturned palm. This is the downturned palm. Okay. You inhale, you drop the legs to the downturned palm. Exhale, go back through center, cross legs through center, reverse which palm is up, which palm is down, and then inhale, go to the other side. So you might have your arms out at an angle or out like a 90-degree angle, swept back wings, or more like 45-degree angle. So keep moving like this. So we exhale center, reverse the palm, and then inhale, drop the knees to the downturned palm. Exhale through center, reverse the palms, and then inhale, drop the legs to the opposite palm. Maybe look to the opposite direction with your head and neck compared to the legs. Continue to imagine that big clock under your hips and pelvis. And when you are moving over to your right side, You're pressing into 3 on your imaginary clock. That's your right SI joint. And when you move over to the left side, you feel the left lower back and hips contact the ground. You're moving over to 9 on your imaginary clock. Let's take one more to each side. Exhale, center, reverse the palms. Inhale as you stretch over to a side. Exhale as you come back through center. Reverse which palm is up and which palm is down. Inhale as you drop the legs to the side. Great. Let's exhale, come back through center, but keep the cross in the legs. And I ask you to place your peace fingers on the base of your scalp. Elbows out to the side. Keep the right toes flexed to protect your knee. Inhale. And you guessed it, you know where we're going. A little crunch. Exhale right up through the midline. Inhale, rest back. Exhale, squeeze up. And when you squeeze up, can you also do that tail tuck? So when your chest and head come up, can you curl your tailbone up? Can you also press your lower back into the ground? Make sure you're not over recruiting the front of your throat. So even as your peace fingers are supporting your skull, even push your head a little back into your fingers so the back of your neck becomes long. Let's go 6 more like this. Your own count of 6. Maybe you're ready for a break, but it's important that we work 360 degrees over any area we want to heal. And if you'd like a little more intensity, float your foot up as you crunch, crunch, and then the foot can drop down. Exhale, crunch. Good. If you still wanted more, maybe straighten the leg all the way to the ceiling as you crunch, or not. Can keep that foot down. 1 or 2 more like this. Working with your breath. Exhale, squeeze up. Keep your low back sealed, airtight seal onto the ground. And that was the end for Nicole. She's done with that.
Okay.
Keep the legs crossed. Release the hands. No, keep the legs crossed, but release the hands. Perfect. So a couple options. Maybe right hand pushes the right knee away, and you're trying to get a little stretch in that outer right thigh. Maybe you're not getting any, so you can walk your left foot. Now, would you mind changing your angle again for the camera? So actually bring your head that way.
You just love to tell me what to do.
It's true. This is
like one of the only times.
This is the only time I get to tell Nicole what to do, so I'm going to take advantage of it. So maybe you push right hand into right foot. If you still want more, walk left heel closer to left seat. If you had your block and you still wanted more, you could put your foot on top. And again, pushing that away. Maybe you still want more intensity. So if you're not feeling anything in your outer hip, what we call the piriformis muscle, then maybe interlace your fingers on either side of that left thigh, lifting the foot. Perfect.
Are you trying to get between my legs there?
Well, that's one way to say it. Let's draw the left leg closer to our body. So think of left leg closer, but can you use your right elbow to push your right knee away? So we're using opposites to go beyond opposites. Left thigh coming closer to our body as the right thigh goes further away. And let's allow that fascial reorganization to cook. 3 deep breaths. If you'd still like more, for some of us, we want to extend the leg all the way to the ceiling. We could even bypass the knee, hold on to the outer hamstring, calf. You could even, just give yourself a little stretch. 1 more deep breath in, left thigh closer, right thigh away. And let's release the legs. Let the left foot float down. Draw your right knee up to your right armpit by interlacing your fingers behind or in front of the knee. If you're healing in the knee, please hold behind the knee. If you have happy knees, then you can hold in front of the knee. If you're healing in your lower back, you're going to want to keep your left leg bent. If you have a happy low back, then you're going to flatten your lower back. Very actively pull right knee into your right axilla or armpit. Imagine there's a weight, or even take your left hand on the top of your right thigh and encourage your right leg to melt, your right hip to release. And that's less about activating muscles and more about releasing muscles, especially behind your left hip. Nicole's showing a happy baby version where you could place the foot to face the ceiling and hold on to the outer blade of the foot, draw the knee toward the ground. Take another breath or two here. Not only beneficial for releasing SI joint, pseudosciatic tension, but also incredibly beneficial for helping prime the pump on our elimination system. We're helping squeeze out our lymph nodes in our belly and groin, as well as our colon. Let's release that leg flat all the way down to the ground. If your other leg's bent, release it all the way down to the ground. And just enjoy about 30 seconds of stillness. Palms turned upright. That'll open up the shoulder girdle. Notice how you feel, especially in and around your core, your lower back, your hips, your pelvis. And now let's balance ourselves out. So I'm going to ask you to put your head toward the camera again, Nicole. I know you love it when I tell you what to do.
Get out of my way.
Head toward the camera. The rest of us are going to cross our left ankle over our right thigh. Our arms are going to be out like wings again. Great. One palm is going to roll up. One palm is going to roll down. And we're going to inhale and drop the crossed legs over to the downward facing palm. Perfect.
Is that right?
That's it. Good. Exhale through center. Move that legs through center. Reverse which palm is up, which palm is down. Inhale, drop the legs to the other. And downturned palm might be different for you. It doesn't matter. Generally, get to the idea. Exhale, center, reverse the palms. Inhale, drop the legs to the opposite side. While you look, if it's safe for your neck, look the opposite direction that your legs are dropping toward. Beautiful. We're working with 12 major joints of our body and our ankles, our knees, our hips, our shoulders, our neck, our thoracic vertebrae. Beautiful breathing. And here again, when the right side presses into the ground, visualize that 3 on your imaginary pelvic clock. And when the left SI joint, the left lower back touches the ground, you're at 9 on your imaginary clock. And notice if either of those areas are tender. Move with your breath. When we can coordinate breath with movement with our attention, we're knocking on the door of meditation. Meditation is simply a sustained focus. And if we have the focus capacity to breathe and move in a synchronized way, we are up-leveling our attention, our focus, our meditative awareness. How about one more to each side? Inhale, drop the legs to the downturned palm, look to the opposite direction. Exhale back through center, reverse which palm is up, which palm is down. Inhale, drop the legs to the opposite side. Exhale back through center. Keep the legs crossed, everything centered. Peace fingers, we got those crunches. Inhale, exhale, and go right up to the center of your left calf. Inhale, head, shoulder, elbow, return down. Exhale, curl your tailbone up as your head, as your shoulders and elbows come up. I'm suggesting just interlacing or interspersing your peace fingers behind your occiput so we don't over crank into our arms. Push your head into your hands to get longer and softer neck. And for the last 6 repetitions, maybe float your foot off the mat. Keep your lower back airtight seal into the ground. Find something uplifting to focus on. It said, if you aim for the sky, you'll hit the treetops. You aim for the ground, you're going to hit your foot. 1 or 2 more like this. Give yourself the business. We're helping strengthen and stretch 360 degrees all around our core. Beautiful. You relax the head, shoulder, elbow down. Let go of the arms. Keep the legs there. Maybe we push the left knee away with our left hand. Maybe we walk our right heel closer to our seat, or we place a block underneath or a towel or a pillow underneath our right foot. So for most of us, we're pushing the left knee away, and you might feel a little something on your left glutes, piriformis hip. If you'd still like more, float your right foot off the ground and interlace your fingers on either side of your right hamstring. And if you didn't consciously change the interlace in your hands, change the interlace so the opposite index is on top. Bringing the webbings of the fingers close together will help lengthen and strengthen those muscles and tendons and joints in your hands and wrists. Take a few deep breaths here. If the right foot is floating, you're holding onto the back of the right thigh. Draw the right thigh closer to you, but use your left elbow to push the left knee further from you. So feel as though right leg closer to your belly, left knee further from your belly. Maybe you want to extend your leg up. It's an option. It's not necessary. One time, find 2 more deep breaths. As we consider the energetics of feeling backed up, feeling as though you got your own back. You feel like, on the other hand, conversely, if we don't feel supported, we feel like we're stabbed in the back or we're always bending over backwards. So it's important to create support and feel supported is to energize and strengthen our core. Let's release that. Release both feet back to the mat and don't release both legs yet. Float the left knee. We have some unfinished business. Left knee up toward the left armpit. And again, if you haven't changed the interlace, if you're healing in the knee, hold behind the knee. If you have a happy knee, then you can have your hands in front of the knee. But remember, when we bend the knee more than 35 degrees, so here's about 90, about half of that's 45, about here, not only does the knee straighten and bend, but the knee also, the shin bone also translates or rotates. So that when we do deep knee flexion like this, we're actually twisting the the shin. And if you're healing in your knee, likely you want to keep your seat away from your feet until you get more stability in your knees. 1 or 2 more deep breaths. You could do the happy baby variation with the foot toward the ceiling. Right hand on thigh. Cue that right thigh to melt into the earth. 1 more deep breath here. And when you feel complete, let your leg relax all the way down. Take a breath or 2 here. We want to see if you can be perfectly still for about a half of a minute. So it takes approximately 20 to 30 seconds for the blood to get oxygenated from our heart and lungs, move through our organ gland tissues in our body, and then to be recycled back into the heart and lungs to be reoxygenated. Whenever we move muscles, activate our body, that's where the blood and oxygen go. By taking these intentional power pauses, these little mini shavasanas, we allow the body intelligence to give the blood, the oxygen to the areas that most require them for healing, for wellness. All right, we're going to continue to work with our pelvic clock. So let's rebend our knees. Place your hands on your hips at first. Great. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to go from 12 and 6 and 3 and 9. So remember, we did the yes breath. So we inhaled, tailbone arched, low back arched, tailbone went down. And we exhaled and the low back flattened, tailbone curled up. So just take a breath or 2 as you move from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. So you inhale, your lower back arches, tailbone presses down into the ground in that imaginary 12 o'clock. You exhale, the waistband presses down into the mat. You press into the imaginary 6 o'clock. Now find that neutral pelvis between 12 and 6 o'clock. Now we're going to try to...
My sacrum feels totally different after that.
Your sacrum feels totally different after the stretch. Good. Yeah. So notice how the yes breath feels now compared to previously about 15 minutes ago. Now we're going to try to isolate the range of motion in our hips and pelvis, really trying to get our deep core awareness. And remember, your center of gravity is one hand width below your navel and one hand width into your body. We're going to try to move from our core. So as you inhale, press your right hip down into the ground, but feel your left hip lift up, right? So it would look like right hip presses down, left hip presses up. But as you exhale, let your right hip lift, but push your left hip down. Good. And you can see here, and I'm going to get a little more focused on Nicole's body here. So as she inhales, we've got the right side goes down, the left side lifts up. As she exhales, we switch. The left side goes down, the right side lifts up. We're still keeping the seat on the ground, low back's on the ground, but we are continuing to mobilize in through our hips, our SI joint. And so notice there might be a tendency for your legs to sway left and right. We want to avoid that. We want to really help emphasize if the legs move, maybe they move forward and backwards. So can you begin to get a sense of that right SI pressing into 3 o'clock, that left SI pressing into 9 o'clock? And now we're going to add a layer. So again, pause here, find that neutral pelvis between 12 and 6 and between 3 and 9 o'clock. And we're going to add a little challenge. We're going to find our block. And so your block is, you're going to place your block, your blanket in between your thighs. And so you don't want it right between the bony parts of your knee if you have the hard block, but more into the tissue, the soft tissue. So now let's try with a little activation in our adductors. Let's do a couple of yes breaths. Tailbone 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So arch your low back, round your lower back. Notice how activating your inner thighs or adductors helps that motion or challenges that motion. Now try to do the 3 o'clock and the 9 o'clock. So pushing the right SI, your right hip down, and then your left hip down. Yeah, that should be a lot harder. That's a lot more challenging. If you need, you can also make the block wider. So can you separate for a second? So you could also put the block on the medium or the widest setting, and that might make it a little easier. Notice Nicole is avoiding left to right movement with the knees, but sometimes the thighs are moving a little forward or backwards. After your next exhale, let that go. Find the neutral pelvis, but you're going to still continue that gentle engagement of your adductors. That's the muscles on your inner thighs. Now we're going to go all the way around the clock. So start by arching your lower back, pressing your tailbone into 12 o'clock, and then move over toward the right side, toward 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. That's your right SI. Then move up 4, 5, 6 o'clock, your waistband. Then move to the left side. Can you find 7 o'clock, 8, 9 o'clock? Keep moving up the upper left side, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and continue to move in this clockwise motion, taking your time, working with all these very powerful ligaments that connect the bones of the sacrum and ilium. Ligaments connect bone to bone. Tendons connect muscle to bone. And likely you're going to find some tender areas as you go around the clock. Can you find which numbers on the clock are the most tender to you? And then pause over those numbers that might be achy, sore, tender, or numbers that feel numb. Did you find some numbers where you're like, where did 7 go?
Yeah, I skip over.
Yeah, numbers that you skip over. Pause over those numbers that feel tender or feel numb, and then seesaw back and forth. So if 1, 2, and 3 were fine, but 4, you're like, where did 4 go? Move from 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 3, 4, 5, and continue to do that till you create a little more equanimity, a little more balance in and around that number, maybe 6 reps or so, and then continue to move in a clockwise fashion until you find another area that feels tender or numb. We're going to continue moving generically clockwise, but pause over those tender or numb areas and create a little equanimity with your movement. And this is incredibly potent for us getting our nervous system and our awareness in our hips and pelvis, which is an area that generally we numb out. We don't really give a lot of attention to our hips or low back unless they're acting up, unless they feel tired or tender or hurt. Anybody have any questions? Let's move one more time around the clock.
I'm ready to go the other way.
Okay, Nicole's ready to go the other way. So pause here. Before we go to the other way, though, I'm going to ask you to do a little more engagement. Uh-oh. So what we're going to do now is we are going to straighten our legs. Remember the anchored bridge we did yesterday?
Oh, no.
I don't know if you heard that. She said, oh, no. So here we go. The legs are extended, and I'm going to change the angle. We've got a beautiful block or pillow or blanket in between the thighs. The knees are going to bend so that they're about 8 inches off the ground. Notice Nicole's feet and toes are flexed back. Beautiful. We're going to take a few deep breaths here. And let me get a little more stable camera tripod for us. Excellent. And so here, starting on a level up to 10, begin to squeeze the block, push your heels into the ground, flex your toes back at about a 4 out of 10 on the intensity scale. If you'd like more, take your palms about 6 inches from your hips, push your fingertips into the ground so strong that your elbows elevate, your shoulder blades draw down and back, and here you're trying to stretch your armpits toward your side pocket. We're pressing the feet into the ground. We're flexing the toes as far back as you can, and we're squeezing the block. Maybe you're up to a 4, 5, or 6 out of 10. Continue this for about another 40 seconds. Give yourself a rest if you need. If you want a little more, push your heels more into the ground. If you still want more, feel as though you're moving. You're going to feel as though you're sliding your heels towards your seat, but they don't actually slide, and slide your seat towards your feet, but they don't actually slide. And now for the last 20 seconds, if you want more, pull your hips and heels toward each other so much that the hips lift up just an inch, just a millimeter. And so the hips lift up for 5, keep breathing. 4, squeeze the knees. 3, heels and glutes toward each other. 2, gently, slowly. 1, lower down. OMG. Let go of the block. Yeah. Good. Draw knees to chest, thighs to belly. Give yourself a little relaxation. Give yourself a little hug. Rock it out a little left or right. You can hold behind your knees or in front of your shins. Woo! That'll wake you up.
That'll wake up my low back.
Yeah. And let's do one more pelvic clock, but this time let's go counterclockwise. So we're going to place our feet flat. We're going to grab either a block, a blanket, a couch pillow, something just to cue and remind our adductors to activate. Our heels are about 1 hand length or maybe a little further from our seat. And we press the tailbone in the ground, lift the low back off the ground, and then move over toward 11 o'clock, 10, 9, left SI, 8, 7, 6, that's the waistband, 5, 4, 3, right SI, 2, 1, 12. So moving counterclockwise, notice if you can feel any new areas of tenderness, any new areas that feel numb, or just don't feel quite as connected. And again, you'll pause over those numbers and you'll hold for, you'll sashay, you'll seesaw a little ahead and behind those numbers as you find tender areas. So I notice when I move counterclockwise, different numbers on the imaginary clock activate and get stirred up in a different way when I move in a different direction. So beginning to get a little equanimity. This is from a movement modality called Feldenkrais. This is called the pelvic clock. And this is cumulative. Nicole and I have been practicing this one move for more than 20 years. It's one of the most common things I use on a weekly basis. I probably do pelvic clock 3 to 5 times a week, just as a way to help locate the different structures in my low back, hips, and pelvis, and to release unnecessary tension guarding. Yeah, yeah. Does that feel about cooked there?
Yeah.
Feeling a little cooked here? So maybe you want to release the block. One more time, draw the knees to chest, thighs to belly. Give yourself a little rock, a little hug. Massage out your low back, massage out your hips, your kidneys. We're gonna notice what nostril you're breathing through more easily. Reach that arm up, back, and behind us and roll all the way over to that side. Beautiful. Pause here, rest your head on your arm. Take a few deep breaths. Breathe into that back body. Breathe into those hips, those pelvis. We gave a lot of attention.
Yeah, it's very warm.
Yeah, very warm. It was a nice 40-minute set for your low back, your hips, your SI joint. Beautiful. Place the top palm in front of your chest. Engage, activate your core as you push the palm into the ground. We'll lift up to a comfortable seated position. And I'm going to grab another little tripod for us.
Okay. Get some water, adjust, maybe even take a walk around the room as you notice how you feel after, what was that? You said 40 minutes of movement. Nice.
Yeah.
How lovely.
Very good.
I'm going to grab some water too.
Yes, I got my water. So we're going to do a little anatomy exploration. Yeah.
Get comfortable.
All right. All right. So before we review some of the anatomy and structures that we've been exploring today, I wanted to, bless you. Bless you.
Thank you.
I wanted to open up the forum to see if anybody had any questions about any of those techniques.
Or feedback, comments, concerns.
Yeah, I saw from Natasha that she feels the heat. Marion, I love that. And that's over. Yeah. So there's for those of you who aren't familiar with Nicole or I or haven't done many of our classes, a lot of times after we do challenging activities or just intense situations, we'll inwardly affirm, and that's over. So make sure you're not taking the old yoga pose, the old mindset into the present moment. And Sandy,
loose and elongated, Sandy. Nice. Yes.
Love it.
Yeah, I feel definitely warm and kind of brighter, and not just in my low back, but I can feel it like 360.
Yeah,
really
and
nice.
I even notice a subtle difference. Your voice sounds like it's about an octave lower, and I'm wondering, as you get more awareness and breath into your lower body, that you access those lower vocal cords.
My core.
Yeah.
Speaking from my core.
So Natasha's asking, when we're doing the pelvic clock, does the low back stay pressed onto the floor? Not for the upper half of the clock.
When you tilt your tailbone into the ground, your low back comes off the ground, but you're not pressing or lifting your glutes off the floor. So you're constantly connected to the ground, but it's just your low back that arches and then flattens.
Would you mind showing your hips?
Oh, yeah.
And I want to show a clock shape on the back of your sacrum.
Sorry,
so face,
lay on my...
No, just face that way. Just
okay.
Turn around. And I want to just demonstrate the area we were focusing on, the clock. The clock is about here. It's about in that area. So we've got, yeah. And we were doing the clock upside down. So the tailbone, we were imagining 12, and the waistband 6 o'clock. So when you're pressing the tailbone down to the ground, the lower back is lifted. So for 12, 1, 2, and 3, and 12, 11, 10, and 9, likely the low back is off of the ground. And then when we curl the tailbone up and we press the waistband the other way, press the waistband down, then we have 9, we have the 3, 2, 1, 12, and 12, 11, 10 is pressing into the ground. Does that answer your question, Natasha?
I can turn around now.
Thank you. Very nice. Yeah. Yeah, good. Thanks, Natasha.
All right.
Any other questions before we get into a little more anatomy exploration? Okay.
Hello. I'm sorry. This is Natasha again. I just had a question. Just doing some of the movements, I do feel like my my right foot still kind of has the tingling through it. Is it that it means I'm gonna have some compression somewhere, or just need to do this a little bit more?
Yes, and yes. So likely there's some compression, and it could be an impingement of a nerve like the sciatic nerve, could actually be an impingement of the blood vessel. We've got the femoral artery growing through the pelvis and the inner groin. But it really doesn't matter where the impingement is coming from. But it's actually a good sign, I think, with movement therapy when you start to notice more sensations, especially if you have a particular ache or pain or challenge, like your foot goes numb a lot, or if there's a particular symptom that is troublesome and you're doing a movement therapy technique around it and it mimics the pain, that's actually breadcrumbs along the path to your own healing. That's a sign that you're on the right path when you're I'm not talking about exacerbating your pain or your pain becoming worse, but I'm talking about something that, like, wait a minute, when I do that, I feel that thing that I oftentimes feel. So as a massage therapist, it might be we're working on the back, for instance, and we find a knot. And when we drop an elbow into the knot, it mimics the same pain pattern that the client or the patient experiences.
And then we know we're on the treasure trove of goodness. We're like, that's exactly where we want to be. So I think, is that what you're saying? You're like, you feel that, and then you know where it's coming. Then you get a clue, and then you get aware of where it's coming from, so that you can now go back to it over and over again in different ways, so that you can start to release it. I have one favorite nerve glide stretch. Can I show for like, it's just a real quick, if you just want to do this, Natasha, if anybody else wants to join us, but it's a nerve glide stretch. If you ever feel that kind of radiating pain going down from your low back all the way to your foot or somewhere in between, this might be helpful for you. Really, really simple. Ooh, ding, ding.
Yes.
Cool. You're just gonna look down. You don't mind?
Yes, I will help set this up.
Your knees are bent. You're gonna grab behind your hamstring.
Almost here. Just a second. Sorry, there we go.
Nice. And you're just grabbing behind your hamstring, and then you're just lifting your foot up to the sky, and then dropping it down. So you're going to lift your foot up to the sky and stretch your foot back towards you, stretch your toes, feel that stretch down the back of your leg, and do that about 6-10 times on this side.
6 to 10, not 60-10.
Yeah, thank you. 6 to 10 times. And it's really simple. It really doesn't feel like a whole lot, but you want a nice warming sensation going down the foot, down the leg, into the hamstrings, maybe even into your glutes. Feel your low back pressing into the floor, and you're just going back and forth. If you're feeling pretty flexible, you can let that opposite leg straighten down on the ground as you move gently back and forth through this. And this might help open up and stretch that particularly sciatic nerve. Nice. You can do that on both sides to discover which side the compression is on. But the side that's feeling the numbness is the side you'd want to focus on, and it's something that you can repeat throughout the day.
Yeah. And
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Natasha. And that goes to everybody. If there's something specific you want to learn for yourself, this is the perfect forum. We can talk about all kinds of things, but we're already familiar with it. So we want to be able to your wants, your requests,
and let us know if that helps you, Natasha. I'd be curious.
I would definitely be doing it. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, and I also want to underscore something Nicole said, is that you would do it more on the side that's challenging. So generally when people take a yoga class, the yoga teacher teaches the same thing on the left as they do on the right.
It's perfect symmetry.
Yeah.
But who's symmetrical? Have you ever met a symmetrical person?
Well, I mean, I've seen them on the big screen, but mostly, and from my own personal experience of massaging thousands of people over the last couple decades, is I've never seen a symmetrical person. That there's one hand is dominant, one leg has more muscle mass. You can even, just as simple as measuring the width of the Achilles tendon, you could have a buddy stand up and then hold on each side behind their ankle. Usually one Achilles tendon is thicker, and that's the dominant leg. So not only in how our structure develops, but also when we have pain or injuries, that can zigzag or ping pong up the body and create all these compensatory asymmetrical patterns. So when we're looking to resolve or heal our own body, take into account which side, usually one side is a little more challenged than the other. And you want to spend 2 or 3 times more time on the challenge side than the so-called stable side. And now, doesn't mean you won't do the side that's not bugging you. You still want to do that to help recruit left and right brain hemisphere coordination. But we want to invest more time on the challenge side. And just because, for instance, as an example, just because you might have tension on your right hip doesn't mean it'll be your right shoulder. It might be right hip, left shoulder, right knee, left hip, or might zigzag. So just notice these kinds of things and focus on the side that gives you more challenge. So let's share a little anatomy conversation. And
what did we just move around?
Yeah. One of the conversations that Nicole, if you don't know, Nicole and I write a column in Massage and Bodywork magazine called Savvy Self-Care. We've been the contributing columnists for the last several years. And this is a line that just came out in the last article that we drafted, that self-care is being self-aware.
Yeah, it's the practice of becoming self-aware. So the more we give attention to and respond to our body's cues of, I'm hungry, maybe I should eat something, I'm tired, oh, maybe I should rest or sleep. Your body gives you cues that you're thirsty. These are all ways that we can take care of ourselves, take that sip of water. So are we being masterful by listening to our body's messages and using them as a source of truth to help brighten our self-awareness and become more kind and caring and generous with our attention towards ourselves? And eventually that can't help but spill over to everybody and anyone that we connect with. So how generous are you with your self-care? When your body is signaling to you that you're thirsty, that you're hungry, that you're tired, do you give yourself the sustenance, the nutrition, the rest that you need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And specifically today, we've been looking at the lower back. And you heard Nicole say QL. You heard both of us say QL a number of times. So the clinical expression is quadratus lumborum.
Yeah, this is a nice picture of its attachments along the iliac crest, the top of the hip bone, and then all those lumbar vertebrae at the base of our spine, and then also at the 12th rib.
So we're looking at mostly the left side back of a person. Here's their low back bones. Here's their hip bones, ilium. Here's the top of the sacrum. And here's, as Nicole was describing, L1, lumbar 1 through lumbar 5.
I forget that we could point. Thanks for doing that.
Here we have the 12th rib. Can you guys actually see my cursor, by the way?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Okay, cool.
Okay, good. So the 12th rib, the quadratus lumborum, is connected to the last rib. It's called a floating rib. It's connected to the iliac crest, and it's also connected to what's called the transverse processes, these little wings of the lumbar vertebrae.
And what I love about knowing and seeing this is that when we start to move our bodies and we're working on the floor and we're doing these pelvic tilts and we're kind of creating these big hula hoop circles, we can close our eyes and visualize these muscles that we're trying to activate and connect to. And this also wakes them up. Just by paying attention to something, we change something. So when we pay attention to a specific muscle, we get to wake it up in a new way. We give it attention in a new way that moves it, that innervates it, that activates it, brings more self-awareness, and we start to give ourselves this generous care, this generous self-care that we're all doing here together.
Yeah, and kind of we're speaking to the symbolism or the metaphysics of our low back, of our core. So are we feeling supported from our essence, from the depths of our being? Are we feeling backed up, supported? But, of course, the quadratus lumborum is one of the most commonly described low back muscles. But if we're looking to heal the back, we actually have to look adjacently.
Above and below, front and back, and to the sides. It's one muscle and other muscles creating this melody of movement.
Oh, I like how you said that.
Oh.
And so we're looking at the back of the body. We have erector spinae muscles that connect the occiput, the base of the skull, all the way down to the sacrum. Here we have some quadratus lumborum. We have the internal obliques. We'll talk more about glute muscle shortly. We discussed and experimented. How about that bridge, that anchor bridge? We felt our hamstrings.
Oh, we just did a little nerve glide slide of that sciatic
Here's
nerve.
that sciatic nerve that Nicole was showing a recipe, a technique to unlock it. But not only when we think of the back do we want to look above, below, adjacent, beside, but also
To the front.
in front.
To the front. To the front. Yes. Yes. So we're also talking about the psoas. I think he'll point to
Yeah,
it. That
the psoas is right in the middle of our body. So it's behind our belly button. It connects all the way from our diaphragm, basically below our rib cage, and the front of our lumbar vertebrae comes through our pelvic bowl and is one of the two muscles that connects our axial skeleton, that's our spinal cord, our spinal column, and our appendiculoskeleton, that's our legs. So the psoas goes from the low back through the pelvis to the inner leg.
And it's really cool muscle in that it does both flexion and extension. It's one of the few muscles that does both. It does hip flexion, so it brings a knee up towards your chest, and it does core flexion, brings your ribs to your hips. So it's a really powerful muscle in the center of our body that's helping create stability and alignment of our spine. It's also connected to our breath. The low back, the diaphragm is connected to how powerfully, how open, how free are we breathing. So take a moment now to kind of lengthen your spine and feel your breath. Feel your breath not only going up to your chest, but down into your belly. And then go wide with your breath. And let's get 3D. Let's go back with your breath.
So can you breathe into the back of your rib cage? Can you breathe into your lower back, your lung? And keep in mind that a majority of your lung tissue, more than 60% of our lung tissue, it's not in the top front of our ribs, it's actually in the back half of our rib cage.
And it's a powerful way that we can create support for our whole body, support for not only our low back, but for our heart. Every time we take a nice breath in and out, we're stretching that muscle, that tendon that surrounds our heart, massaging our heart. Every time we inhale, exhale, we're also massaging our digestive organs, bringing softness to our adrenals, our kidneys, softening and supporting from the inside out using just your breath, simply using your inhales and exhales. 20,000 breaths on average a day. You have a chance to support yourself.
And this gives me the idea that maybe while we're talking through a few more anatomy slides, we could actually practice what's called decompressive breathing.
Perfect.
So what I'd like you to do, we'll do a little experience. And if as often as you can recollect, we're going to invite you to practice the specifically designed breathing exercise while we discuss some other anatomical considerations. So what I'd like you to do is place your hands so that they face your belly. Doesn't matter how your legs are, maybe you're in a chair or whatever, but place your hands on your belly. Your thumbs are touching your rib, your lowest rib, but your pinkies are touching your hip bones. And as you inhale, you could also do, in Hawaii, they call it the shaka. So sometimes people will do this position. And this is called decompressive breathing. So as we inhale, I'm going to try to increase the space between the hips and ribs. So inhale and try to lift the ribs up and broaden them. But as you exhale, try to narrow your core. Concentralize your core so that your ribs don't drop down. Usually when we exhale, it drops, right? So do the opposite. So inhale into the ribs, into the side ribs, into the back of the neck. But as you exhale, tighten your core and try to maintain that space between your hips and ribs. Try this a few more times. Inhale. Can you lift your ribs even higher, 360 degrees, inflate them, But as you exhale, feel yourself tighten up what's called the TVA, transverse abdominis, to sustain that space between hips and ribs. One more I'll talk you through. Inhale. So you're trying to broaden around your collarbones and the back of your neck and shoulders. And then exhale, tighten your core. Try to maintain that space between hips and ribs. Good. And feel free to circulate a few more of these decompressive breaths as we continue our conversation.
I feel very superhero-y when I do that.
You feel like Superman.
And maintaining that space is really hard to do. And so you just towards your spine in order to keep that space between your ribs and your hips. Really nice.
Yeah. And with more practice, you'll actually create more space in your vertebral column.
From attachment site to attachment site. So you got the ribs on the you got the QL attaching to the ribs and the QL attaching to the hips. So every time you take that decompressive breath, you're actually creating more space. You're stretching your QL muscle. You're creating support with your breath.
So here's that QL muscle, which is in the back part of the body. Here's the psoas that's kind of in the middle and goes right through our body. Here's the sister iliopsoas called iliacus. Yesterday, we talked a bit about the iliotibial band, as well as fibularis longus, the peroneal muscle, and how all these systems impact one another. Yesterday, we spent some time talking about the lateral fascial meridian. Today, we're going to talk about the anatomy train, or the fascial meridian, called the deep front line. So yesterday, we were talking about how the bottom of the foot, the outside of the ankle, up the shin, IT band, latissimus dorsi through your shoulder and side of your neck, was all connected through what's called the lateral fascial line. Here we're talking about the deep front line, and notice it's deep.
It's core. We're talking core muscle.
But so core isn't just the front of your belly.
Exactly, but it also includes your adductors, the inside of your thighs. It includes your diaphragm. It includes even the front of your neck, your masseter.
That's your jaw muscle.
And your big fan-shaped muscle on the side of your head called temporalis. So all this, by impacting and working and playing with, innervating, activating our core muscles, QL, psoas, we're also having an impact on the muscles above and below the core itself.
I want to also point out something that might not seem intuitively like a core muscle at all, but is significantly impactful, influential in how we feel in our back. And that's the back of the adductors, which kind of looks a lot like the hamstring. So it's not specifically the hamstring, but keep in mind these front adductors, they're very meaty. They're very large muscles, and they move and work in coordination with the hamstrings to help stabilize the pelvis and knee. Mm-hmm. So keeping our adductors toned is going to go a long way toward creating more space. And if you haven't thought of it,
we got to play with it. Yeah, we got to play with it today with the knee squeezes.
Yes,
I love that.
Squeezing the block.
But what were you going to say? I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off.
I was going to encourage you to keep up your decompressive breathing. If you've kind of let that go, keep it going. And here we have even more specificity. Another way, and like Nicole was saying earlier, the more you study anatomy, the more you can visualize this, the easier it is for you to put your brain in your body, to body map yourself so you can locate where are the different structures, how do I activate and turn on different muscles, how can I optimize my functionality in my body so that I can continue to get more range of motion, more balance, more strength for my entire life. Mm-hmm. Instead of allowing it to diminish because I'm not paying attention to it, how can I give that care, that self-care, to help activate and open myself aware? Mm-hmm. So here again, psoas connecting to the front of the lumbar, iliacus, iliopsoas together to the inner thigh, and all those adductors. Oh, here, why don't we take a nice psoas stretch while we take a look at this one? Ooh. So a couple options. So here's another image. I like this one of the psoas in the front of the lumbar vertebrae going in through the pelvic bowl to insert in what's called the lesser trochanter of the femur. And so here you see it coming right up through the core, through the pelvic bowl. So what I'd like you to do is find a position on the ground And maybe, Nicole, can you demo
you want me to
a
demo?
lunge position?
Sure.
Yeah, and I'll get us set up so that you have one foot. Let's all put our right foot forward.
Good angle.
Yes. All right. That's even better. All right. So we've got our, could you actually go sideways?
This way?
Yes. Great. So one knee down and one knee, could you go back two even more? I guess I could move the camera. It's more
Yes.
fun telling you what to
I
do.
know, and we're like live, so I'm not gonna not do what you tell me to do.
Right foot forward, and notice her ankle is under the knee or behind or in front of the knee. You don't want, can you show what you don't want to do? You don't want your foot to come in front of your toes, or you could hurt your knee. So make sure the foot is slid up high enough. There you go. Back knee, you might want padding. So would you like blanket?
Yeah, sure.
You could give yourself some comfort in that back knee. And so now Nicole is stretching, or in a moment, she will be stretching her, let's see which foot she brings forward. Her left psoas. Yeah, so the right foot is forward. And here we can get a beautiful stretch of that back left psoas. And we have a few options. We can create a little more space. So feel like you're creating space from the back knee all the way to the front rib.
Sometimes this might be hard. It might be hard to just come up onto the knee. So maybe starting out with your hands on the floor might be a better option as a way to introduce a nice gentle stretch, wake up that psoas.
Maybe you have a couple blocks because you're not quite there. Maybe you don't want to get on the ground, so instead you can use the side of a bed or the side of an ottoman or the side of a chair. And we can also stretch by placing our knee down and getting the psoas stretch this way too. So don't, especially if you're healing in your knees, you don't have to be on the ground. But this is a great stretch too. So will you go back into the first stretch? If you want a little more, what I'm going to ask you to do now is to place both hands on top of the knee. And let's get your whole frame in here. Excellent. So both knees on top of the knee.
Both hands?
Both hands, right. Thank you. And we're trying to stretch and open. If that's too much, have your hands forward on a block or on the floor. Maybe you can have both hands on your hips. There we go. Oh, she says. Oh. Very nice. If that's possible, maybe you can begin to lean back, open your heart, and imagine like you're doing a little back bend right behind your heart. You could lift your arms up. So for now, actually, you put your right hand on your right thigh, left hand comes straight up. Yeah. And now lean backwards. Try to bring your pelvis, your hips lower to the ground.
That's all I got.
Reach back. Good. Now inhale back to center. Keep your arms up. Exhale, lean to your right. Lean over.
I lost my balance.
Yeah. Deep breaths. If you lose your balance, just smile. Come back to it. One more breath in. One more breath out. Let that go. Arm down. Straighten the front knee. Let's do the other side. So psoas, and if you want a little counterbalance, Nicole's throwing in.
Throw that in.
Yep. So sometimes your body just says, but wait, Heath, I want to do this. Please. Everything we call out is a suggestion, no commands. They're just options. Give yourself anything you might want. Let's do the opposite side. So for most of us, that's the left foot forward. Remember, you could also be standing and have that back knee on a chair. Just make sure that when you bend your knee, it doesn't go past your toes. That would be dangerous. Breaths here. Maybe you're staying at a gentle level, a low, humble warrior. Maybe you bring your hands to interlace on top of your thigh. And imagine you're stretching your quadricep away from your hip, but you have an anchor on your hips and pelvis and it's sinking down to the earth. Find your Goldilocks edge, right? Keep your practice friendly. Don't kill yourself. Don't hurt yourself. Few deep breaths, maybe lift your chest up. Drop your hips down. Maybe begin to lift your right arm up overhead. Inhale. As you exhale, can you extend your bicep behind you and look up and reach up? Can you feel how the sensation in your leg is connected to what's happening in your shoulder? Inhale back to the center. This time, lean to your left. Lean over. Your arm is stretching to the left. You're still dropping your right front hip bone to the ground. Your left hip is trying to reach back behind you. Come back to center with your arm, your spine. Relax the arms down. Maybe take that counter stretch by little half split. You can keep the foot down and straighten that front left knee or lift the toes. You could even windshield wiper a little. Any kind of movement that you do with mindfulness, with intentionality, with friendliness is going to be beneficial. You'll find out what's the most beneficial by using your practice like a living laboratory. All right. Deep breaths, great modifiers.
Super fun.
Thank you, everybody, for your feedback. So, a couple more anatomy things we'd like to share. And feel free anytime if you have questions, if you want to see or hear anything, let us know. All right. So, let's continue on our journey into the hips and pelvis. So we talked a lot about the front of the low back. So we don't often think of the front of the body to heal the back of the body, but it's all interconnected. Now let's look at, anybody have any tight hips?
No.
No, never happens. Maybe some of us have sciatic-like conditions. That's where we feel either local pain in our hip. It might radiate into our low back. It might actually refer and radiate into the back of the leg, the knee, the ankle. And that's often a result of very, very tight, deep
Short,
hip rotators
tight hips,
of the piriformis or the gluteus medius.
And that can come from sitting, or that can come from overuse, from standing for long periods of time, or taking long walks, or jogging, running. Anytime that you're using these muscles, you are walking, you are standing, you are sitting, you're being human.
You're using your glutes. Yeah.
So it's hard to escape having tension here. So anything that you can do to loosen, to open, to connect with them, even if it's just visualizing your glutes, smiling into your glutes as a way to wake them up. And it's always nice. I like to think of myself smiling into my glutes.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Good to hear, Cindy. And if you had a ball, do we have a therapy ball up here?
I do not think so.
Okay, do you mind if I go grab one?
Yeah,
I'll go
sure.
grab one while you share the next little slide.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yes, I'm so happy you felt relief with that Nerve Glide slide. It's one of my go-tos for opening up the hips, releasing and stretching into the hamstrings a little bit too. He's going through an obstacle course. I'm just watching him trip and fall on the way out, sorry. And then, so those are fantastic stretches, go-to moves for you to have on hand if ever you're in the throes of pain and tension. And these are the ligaments that support the connection between the bones. So here's a nice example of how the femur is connected to the hip, the ilium. And then the next slide here shows how all the ligaments are supporting the sacrum to the hips, and then the ilium or the hips themselves connecting to the femur. These are powerful ligaments, so powerful that if you were to fall, there's been kind of research, there's been studies have been done that people have fallen, people have really taken some good spills, been in some accidents, car crashes, and oftentimes the bones will break before the ligaments tear. That's how powerful these ligaments are. And when we don't use these ligaments, we don't move our bodies, they get harder. They begin to solidify. They get plasticized in a way, and they create less range of motion, less flexibility. So sometimes when you feel that that pull when you're moving, or that kind of deep stretch when you're going into some of these hip openers, you might be starting to access the
Ligament?
ligaments,
Fascious?
yeah, the ligaments themselves, but the plastination of those ligaments, you're starting to melt those. You're starting to, what's that word?
Thixotrophy?
Thixotrophy, yes.
Starting to melt disorganized fascia. And what I brought from upstairs, we have a whole room where we took the furniture out, and we just have like a bunch of yoga therapy props. And I think Jake got into this one. But we also have some therapy balls in our car console as well, because if we sit for long periods of time, we tend to have a pain in the rear. And so what I'll invite you to do, either now or at another time when you do tend to sit a lot, say maybe watching the television, is find a tennis ball or find some kind of therapy ball. So this one is kind of squeezy, but it has little spikies. This one is more firm. It's a little bigger.
That's our favorite.
Yeah, this is, and then especially,
send that in a link.
Yeah, especially when it's in a bag and you can go up and down your spinal column with this one. Here's a hard one. This has no pliability.
So dangerous.
It's very,
Painful.
very edgy, achy.
Painful.
This is a squishy one that sometimes we'll use in and around to get into our psoas. But for now, you might want to just take one of the therapy balls, if you have a tennis ball, and just place it underneath your seat. And so this is what we'll do a lot of times to get some passive therapy, is to place that ball underneath one of those structures that we've been exploring here on the slide. So especially in and around the glutes, gluteus medius, piriformis. And so if you have the ball, place it under your seat, or get one for your car, although I guess a lot of us aren't driving around too much lately, and continue to release that lower back. Did you want to go here?
Sure. So we were talking earlier, he talked us through a really nice pelvic clock, discovering where is neutral pelvis. Because oftentimes when we're standing upright, when we're sitting in chairs, when we're moving, oftentimes our pelvis is not neutral. It's either pointed back behind us or tail tucked, and we're sitting on our sacrum. So even now, notice, where is your sacrum? Where is your tailbone? Is it pointing far behind you? Is it pointing and tucking under you? Start to kind of become aware of how and what is the position of your pelvis and how that relates to the pain or tension or freedom that you're experiencing in your low back, shoulders, hamstrings, and even knees. Hi, Jake.
I think maybe we end with a little movement.
Yeah.
Did you want to go over any more slides?
I think that might be good. Yeah. Any questions for us before we finish up with some gentle, just a little ending range of motion, a little bit of movement? Jake just really needs to be here right now. Okay, buddy.
So just a couple movements that could be beneficial. And if you have that ball under your seat, maybe remove that. But please remember that for really simple, easy, effective at-home therapy, especially if you have pain in your hip or in your lower back. So knots in your glutes can often refer pain in your lower back, and vice versa. Tension in your lower back can often refer and radiate pain in your hip, even down your hamstring and your leg. So what we're going to do now is just some nice seated range of motion. Does that sound all right?
Kind of like put it all together.
Yeah. So the safest way to move through our spine is by forward and back bending first, side bending second, and then rotating. Although a lot of times when people hurt their spine, have you ever seen anyone, or maybe you do it yourself, that when something feels a little tweaky, you'll crack your own back or your neck? That's one of the worst things you can actually do for your wellness, because oftentimes are just mobilize an area that's already hypermobile. So instead, we're going to move through systematically releasing our spines in the safest way possible. And if you're healing in your back, whether it be your lower back or your cervicals or anywhere, you really want to take some time to engage your core and also to move in these safe ways. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a little decompressive breath. So either hands or shaka, thumb to lowest rib, pinky to hip bone. We're going to inhale, try to lift your ribs
The water.
and broaden them 360 degrees. But as you exhale, concentralize, tighten, and narrow your core and try to maintain that space. Now we're going to bring our fingers into each other, lift our arms up overhead, keep pushing your fingers into each other, and try that decompressive breath now. So lift your ribs up. Keep pushing your fingers into each other. Exhale, narrow and concentralize your navel. Can you feel like you're maintaining that space between hips and ribs? One more time like this. Push your fingertips, thumb tips so strong together it'd be difficult for someone to separate. Exhale, engage your core, sustain that space between hips and ribs. This time we're going to inhale, get really long, and then exhale, reach in front. Reach, reach, reach. And we're going to fall forward. Maybe you get little spider fingers in front of you, and I'll move so that we both have plenty of space, and fall forward. So you could have any kind of support you like. So as you fall forward, maybe you have a bolster on your belly, maybe you have a block to support yourself and your head, your hands, and take a couple more deep breaths here in this forward fold. Also notice, is your seat coming up? So that's cheating. So try to keep your seat down even as you stretch your arms wide. One more deep breath here. Can you try the decompressive breathing here where you fill into your rib cage, stretch your ribs away from your hips and vice versa, and then exhale, engage your core. A lot more difficult when you're squeezed forward folding. And now engage your core. Inhale, press and lift yourself, walk yourself back. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Let's do a second safest way to move. So we did a little flexion and extension. Let's do some side bending. Did you want to do something different? Okay, so we can either do our legs crossed. You could have one leg out or both legs out. I'm going to suggest we take our left leg forward, our left knee bent into our right thigh. And if you're healing in your knee, keep that right leg straight. If you have a happy knee, you might be able to fold your right knee so the hip and heel are next to each other. You decide. Okay, bring your left hand out to your side and your right hand to your hip. And so what we're going to do is we're going to inhale, lift your right hip up and over towards your left knee, and then exhale, drop your sit bone back down. So we're trying to get a little side to side motion. Inhale, you'll also notice there's a little rotation, but we're also getting some nice side to side motion. So when we inhale, lift your right sit bone off the ground. Imagine your right hip moving to your inner left knee. Exhale, can you press that right sit bone even closer to the ground? One more time. Inhale, hip up and over. Exhale, sink it down and around. And then another thing we can do to add a little more stretch is we can walk both hands over to the left side. Inhale here, and then exhale, stretch and lean like you're trying to walk your hands and your body away from this back right leg. And hopefully you feel a nice stretch somewhere along your side body, and feel wherever you feel the most stretch. Can you get a little more range of motion? Can you get your right shoulder closer to the ground? Feel this beautiful opening all the way from the back of the right leg along the side body through your core. Great, and now we'll begin to engage our core. Inhale, begin to use your arms to press yourself up. And let's reverse the legs. So opposite leg in, right foot into your left thigh. If you have happy knees, maybe bend your left knee, or Nicole could show the other modification. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Good. So here, we're going to bring our right hand to the side, left hand to the hip. Inhale. As you exhale, lift the left hip up, and imagine that left hip coming up and over toward the right knee. And then inhale, drop that sit bone down. Exhale, lift that sit bone up and over. So feeling the shifting of the musculature in and around your hips, your pelvis, your lower back, your lumbar vertebrae, your rib cage. And you can keep it more of a side bending, or if you wanted, you could create a little more side bend and then twist and rotate and even look up and over toward the opposite side. About one more like this. Exhale, lift, stretch. Let's replant that left sit bone. Bring both hands to the outside of your right leg and reach your left hand as far as you can. Reach your left hand, maybe even further than your right hand, and fold forward. Hopefully you're feeling this beautiful stretch along the side, maybe the back of your body. Some people ask us, where am I supposed to feel the stretch? You feel the stretch where you're tight. So go for wherever you feel the most sensation. See if you can accentuate the sensation of the stretch, and then see if you can find a new area to stretch. So wherever you feel the stretch the most, go for it, and then maybe you find a slightly different area and maybe stretch a little more. Beautiful. Begin to walk your hands back under your shoulders. Inhale here, engage your core, and then exhale, walk ourselves up. Beautiful. And then let's do a little twist. Okay, sound good?
Yeah.
So you can have your legs crossed. You can have your legs extended. You could be in a chair if you don't want to be on the ground. And so remember, flexion, extension first, side bending, lateral flexion, extension second. And then the third safest way to move through your spinal column is rotation. If you do rotation first, you can sometimes exacerbate your asymmetries. So be sure you do the forward fold, the back bending, and then the side bending, and then it's safe to do the twist. If you have acute pain, so your low back or your neck or your spine is bothering you, you can do twists, but keep them more to a light to medium. You don't want to do deep twisting when you're healing your spine. Left hand, left knee, right hand behind your seat. Take a deep breath in, long spine. As you exhale, bring your belly to the right, then your shoulders to the right, and then your head and gaze to the right. As you inhale, reverse that. So belly forward, chest forward, gaze forward, right hand, right knee. Exhale, left hand behind you. Inhale, long, tall spine. Exhale, can you move from your core first? Move your belly, keep your head forward, then your shoulders, keep your head forward, then your head. It's okay to stretch your eyes and your neck, but you just want to move from your core first. Inhale, belly, chest, head forward, maybe now left hand in front, exhale. Hand, right hand behind you. Start long spine, slight back bend behind your heart. Keep looking forward as you bring your belly right, then your shoulders right, and then your head and chin, gaze, stretch right. Inhale, reverse, belly, chest, gaze, right hand in front, long spine. Exhale, belly left, shoulders left, head, gaze left. Beautiful. Inhale, center, belly, chest, gaze. Now, a lot of us, where we wanted to start, but we were going nice and slowly, left hand to opposite right knee, inhale. Exhale, belly left, shoulders left, gaze left. Oh, I'm sorry. We're twisting right. Sorry about that, everybody.
I bet you want to add some left.
Yeah, everybody keep twisting to your right, but I did get ahead of myself because I showed you my cards where we were going. So right now, keep breathing as you hold the right twisting stretch. Now we're going to inhale as we're twisting right, belly and shoulders more right, but as you exhale, look to your left, look straight forward. So we're doing two oppositional twists. Inhale, inflate into your chest, belly, shoulders more right, but can you bring your chin and gaze more over your left? That's the idea. Inhale, inflate chest, belly, shoulders more right. This time, drop your left ear to your left shoulder. I bet you're feeling some of that lateral chain or that deep frontal kinetic chain. Inflate into your chest, belly, shoulders more right, but this time bring your chin to your left armpit. Now gently bring your head back to center, release the tension in your arms, and ooh, feel the energy, feel the blood flow begin to course up and down your body. Maybe switch whichever foot is on top or in front if your legs are folded. And let's balance ourselves out. Right hand, left knee. Left hand behind, beside us. Inhale, long, tall spine. Exhale, belly left. Shoulders left. Gaze left. And let's keep twisting left for a few breaths. Each in-breath, can you get a little longer, especially a little back bend behind your heart? Each exhale, can you rotate a little more fully? Keep it friendly, don't hurt, don't force, keep breathing. Soft face, neck, shoulders, jaw. Now, as you inhale, inflate into your chest, belly, shoulders more left, but look straight forward to your right. That's it. Inflate into your chest, belly, shoulders more left, but exhale, look over your right even further. Yeah. Inflate into your chest, belly, shoulders more left, but this time drop your right ear to your right shoulder. Shoulder blades slide into your back pockets. One more deep breath. Inflate into your chest, belly, shoulders more left, but this time bring your chin to your right armpit. Stretch, twist, squeeze it out. As you inhale, bring your head back to neutral. Release the tension in your arms. Beautiful. And we're going to finish up with a Sphinx pose.
Oh, okay, sure.
So one of the most important and healing moves you can do for your spine is back bends. So we're going to do a back bend on our belly. And Jake just growled because I came close to him and I didn't pet him. So he's like, what's up? So if you'd like to finish up with us, totally optional. If you've got a little space on the ground, we are laying on our belly. Our elbows are underneath our shoulders. Jake's going to do. So we got the whole family.
All right.
Our elbows. Oh, yeah. Let me take a picture because we're too cute. And our elbows are underneath our shoulders. Common error is to have your elbows wide. And in fact, do that for a second and feel how it kinks your shoulders. Instead, bring your elbows underneath your inner shoulder crease. If this is too much for your low back, let your legs be wide. Let your legs be wide. If you have happy low back, bring your knees together. Jake is so jealous that our hands are on the ground and they're not petting him. So you can also do a crocodile pose, which is laying on your belly, laying on your belly, but supporting your head with your wrists or your forearms. So find, and that's a back bend too.
Yeah, this might be plenty. If you have back pain, back tension in general, this might be enough.
And this is what you'll want to do regularly. So this is some of the best back therapy. Usually we're rounded, we're in that cashew C-shaped spine, especially when we sit all day. And that pushes the discs, our intervertebral discs in our spinal column backwards. By doing this position, this prone position laying on our belly, it helps the disc go forward, anterior.
Sort of helps reset. So let's build it up. So we could start here, or if you're feeling safe and happy in your low back, there's not a deep compression. Did you already talk about legs wide?
I talked about legs being wide for less intensity.
And if you feel a pinching in your low back, you want your legs to be wider here as well.
The other adjustment you could do if you're feeling a pinch in your lower back is to fold a pillow or a blanket and place it right over your hip bones.
Oh, I thought you were going to give it to me.
Oh, did you want it?
Never mind.
Although now it's pressing on my bladder too. And good time, it's about time to finish up. So back bending, core strengthening, working, visualizing the core in a 360 degree way how we're going to connect with our core and unlock our low back. Marion, is that you laughing at
I love
us?
your
I think I
giggle.
recognize that giggle. Whoever it is, I love the laughing. As we wrap up for the day, and Jake, please be polite.
So you can bring so you can have your hands underneath your head. You can also have your hands along and down by your side. And for me, this feels pretty good. And then gently lift. So this might be enough. Maybe your elbows come underneath your shoulders and you can hang out just here. I have to release my glutes, remind myself to let go of my glutes, my low back, relax. I feel my shoulders coming in towards my ears, so I have to firmly press into the ground to create some space and length in my neck. Big breath, feel your breath pressing into the floor as you inhale. Your belly press into the floor as you inhale, and as you exhale, feel your navel squeeze in towards your spine. And then we can add a little bit of movement here. So you can press your palms into the floor and then slowly inhale up and then exhale back down. And we can do that 2 or 3 more times.
And wherever
Inhale
you
up.
are is perfect.
Exhaling down.
Practice accepting yourself as you are. And a little practice every day is going to be way more cumulatively beneficial than a lot of practice every other day. So,
and finishing up,
taking
back down, your head on your head resting on the backs of your palms.
And with your head resting, can you breathe into your lower back? Can you breathe into your hips? Can you feel yourself being supported? As your muscles release their grips from the bones, can you feel the energy of the earth rising up to hold and support your body? We'll be sending this recording back out to everybody probably before this evening. And look forward to, if you're sharing the next couple days with us, tomorrow we'll be exploring our shoulders, our arms, our wrists, and then moving into the neck and reviewing everything on Thursday. Any questions before we say adieu? Well, if you'd like, I know I would like, and I enjoy at the end of one of these Zoom meetings, if you would unmute yourself and take a moment to say goodbye to everybody, we would appreciate that.
Thank you for being here.
Bye, thank you.
Have a beautiful
Thank you. Thank you. So much. I love
Bye-bye.
it very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.